Hi guys, and a happy new year. I am back with a vengeance, or at least I am back, and let me tell you that in this video not only am I going to be reviewing Wrong Turn 4, but we will also be taking a very brief look at the utter embarrassment, which is the German edition of Wrong Turn 4. So if you saw my reviews for the first three of these, you'll know that I'm something of a fan of Wrong Turn, but I think this one represents a little bit of a turning point for this series. And I say that knowing that the fifth one does not have a good reputation. I've not seen it, but literally I've never heard a good word said about Wrong Turn 5. This one I had seen before, and I remembered it being pretty good, but I think my brain was fooled by the snowy setting, because I used to think of Wrong Turn 4 as that cool one that had the snow in it and the weird sanatorium place, but that was the wrong way to remember Wrong Turn 4, and I shan't make that mistake in the future. From now on, I'm just going to think of this one as the Wrong Turn film with the really bland, boring characters, because that is how you should think of this film. I'm going to have way more criticisms than positives today, and I've already burned through my biggest positive, which is that the sanitarium and the snowy setting looks absolutely brilliant. But once you get beyond that, there's so much that you can pick out when it comes to this film. In fact, let's start with the characters. We've already touched upon them. They are utterly dreadful in this film. There's just nothing to them. I think there's about 10 protagonists, and we don't find out anything about anybody. They are just 10 good-looking people. They all look like models, which is fine, but there's just nothing there. There's nothing on the page. They're just complete blank slates. We don't find out anything about their histories or what they do for a living. That there's no internal dynamics within this group of people who go off on this snowmobile adventure. They're just 10 good-looking people. They might as well have numbers instead of names. And what sums it all up is the opening scene that we get with them. So we start off, once we had the prologue, we start off with this scene at the college that they all belong to. They all look like 27, 28, but they're college students, whatever. And we get one scene with them before we go off towards the horror, and that one scene takes place in a dormitory room, and two of them are lesbians, and they're going at it on one side of the room, and on the other side of the room there's a straight couple going at it. So there's four of them basically having sex, and I'm just thinking to myself, why are we watching this as our one scene before we go off on the trip? We don't know any of these people. Why don't we have some dialogue, get to know them, set some things up maybe? Why are we just watching them having sex? What is the point of this in relation to the film to come? And there isn't any. Now, if this scene had been like halfway through this film, I probably wouldn't have even mentioned it. I probably would just, okay, if you want to put a sex scene like this halfway through the film just to break up the action for a minute or two, fine. I've got nothing against sex scenes in horror films, but there's got to be at least some kind of point to them, you know. Even a thin excuse is better than none. But this scene is just weird being right at the start. It's the first thing we see of any of these characters. Like, by the time they get on the snowmobile, I'm looking around this whole group of people thinking, okay, so there's like 10 people here, there's 6 good-looking people I know nothing about, and then we've got 2 lesbians and 1 straight woman and 1 straight man. Like, the only thing I know about them is the sexuality of some of them, and that's it. So it straight away with this film, it's like it's setting its stall out saying, this isn't going to be like a proper horror film with proper characters. This is just going to be 90 minutes of a few kills, and we'll show a bit of ass, and you can like that or lump it. The villains are not much better. In fact, this is the first time in this series I have not liked the villains at all. The big problem here is that the 3 mountain men that we've got, they're all the same characters who were in Wrong Turn 1. So we know that they have to survive this film in order to be in Wrong Turn 1. So we know the good characters are going to lose from the off, and that just takes all the tension out of the movie for me. I had the same problem when I watched Texas Chainsaw the beginning, because I knew Leatherface and his family would have to survive in order to be in the 2003 remake. This is the problem with horror prequels. You shouldn't really do them unless you absolutely have to. And I think what this film should have done, if it insisted on being a prequel, it should just have had, what's his name, Three Finger. They should have had him and some family members who were not in Wrong Turn 1. So at least then we would have had the satisfaction of seeing some of these freaks die, because they are bloody annoying in this film. They just spend so much of it going, yeah, torturing people and just being complete dicks. And the fact that we've got to sit and endure this, knowing that we're not going to get to enjoy any of them die, that really pissed me off. In this film as well, they seem to have moved from just killing people to actively wanting to torture and cause as much pain as possible. And that's just not the characters from the first three films. You know, the first three, it's all about people going onto their land and then they would be killed so that they wouldn't go away and alert the authorities or whatever. But clean kills for the most part, the occasional bear trap in the woods, bows and arrows, you know, simple realistic stuff. But in this film, they've now started torturing people in big long sequences where they're getting loads of pleasure out of it. There's one scene where Three Finger, he just bites an eyeball out of somebody's skull while he's still alive and stuff like that. The kill so there's like a prologue where we see some characters killed, like back in the 50s or something, when the sanitarium was still open. And there's a torture sequence in that, which is all right, because, well, firstly, the gore looks really good. So they string this doctor up and they have him pulled apart. Like, he's basically quartered. They pull his legs and arms off with some machinery, a bit like that guy in Saw 4, the paedophile from the hotel. And this kill, not only does it look all right, but I can accept that the Mountain Men might want to do this, because for all we know, this doctor character has tormented these teenage freaks in the jail cells for years. And maybe this sort of extra revenge is warranted in their minds. But when we get to the main bulk of the movie, and we get to the snowmobile people, there's another extended torture scene that doesn't really fit in the same way, because the Mountain Men don't know these youngsters from Adam. They've just stumbled across the sanitarium. They don't need to get some protracted revenge over them. They're just intruders. So just kill them in normal slasher movie ways. You don't need to tie a guy to a table, get knives and forks and start taking chunks out of him for like 10 whole minutes of the movie while he just suffers in extreme agony. I can't stand that kill. It's like I'm suddenly watching Cannibal Ferox, and it's like, how have we got to this all of a sudden? Don't do this to this character. For one thing, this is the only half-decent character in the movie. Yeah, the guy they kill, he actually shows some personality for the scenes that he's in, unlike all of his chums. But this kill, it really kind of drags the film down quite a bit. And the shame of it is that some of the other kills are actually all right throughout this. There's one in particular which I would say is excellent. It's one of the best kills in the franchise. This girl, she gets some barbed wire around her throat and they lift her up off her feet, and the blood starts coming down into her boyfriend's face, and the visual effect of that is really cool. And then he slips in the blood and the girl's head finally comes off and lands right next to him, like an inch away from his face. And I really love that whole kill. And I'm going into spoilers now, but at the end of this, there's a really good final kill. So the two surviving women, they get on a snowmobile and their heads get lopped off by barbed wire. We know that they can't survive this movie. So if you're going to kill them at the last minute, it might as well be in a really cool way like this, because I really enjoy that kill. And I also like the death of the woman who... So there's one character who goes for help, and we think to ourselves, okay, so how are the Mountain Men going to get this girl? But they don't. She just freezes to death. But it's kind of teased that she might get away. We go back to her every now and again when she's making a fire in the middle of the night and stuff. But finally, she just freezes and we see her like frozen in the wild. But I like that kill. It's just like a natural, normal way to die. And even the snowmobile kill at the end, I could believe that people have died for real on snowmobiles and bikes by not spotting like a very thin... So it's kind of frightening, that kill, because you think, yeah, that could actually happen. So fair dues for that one. There are some really bad character decisions and choices in this as well. So at one point they managed to get all the Mountain Men into a jail cell. The story should be over at this point, but they blow it. They only leave one person guarding the cell, and he falls asleep. So then the Mountain Men find a way out. Really poor stuff. And then during the big cannibal scene I was talking about earlier, a bunch of them are stood like down the corridor somewhere, and they can hear this guy screaming, like not far away, and they stand there having a really long discussion about whether to go and rescue him, but they're just so laid back about it. It's like they're having a council meeting down the town hall with tea and biscuits. It's like, come on, show some urgency. Your friend's literally screaming his head off down the corridor. Eventually they get moving, but Jesus Christ. And there's another scene. So this is a kill, actually. So the mountain men manage to trick some of the women. They grab one of the guys and put like a hood on him and tie his hands behind his back and make some of the women think that that's one of them. So then the women come out with knives and start stabbing this guy to death. And I will allow some leeway with this one, because the visual of the three women bringing their knives down on this guy is actually quite good. Although I think it would have been even better if the dude who was dying was the same one we saw having sex in the beginning, and these had been the same three women from that scene. I just think it would have been quite a neat thing that the guy from the beginning was being killed by those same three women, almost like, hey, we don't need you anymore kind of thing. But the film doesn't have much creativity or intelligent thought running through it. It's a film that feels rushed just to get to the Blu-ray market. There is one nice little creative spark, shall we say, which happens during the prologue. So they put this classical music on just as a lot of the patients break out of their cells and it gets all chaotic. That was kind of nice, but moments like that are just few and far between. I think this film might have benefited from actually being set in the 50s. I think it would have been a scarier film, and then you wouldn't not just had the mountain men as adversaries, but also maybe some abusive orderlies and bad management. That the horror could have come from all angles. And when I think back to that season of American Horror Story called Asylum, this film could have gone for something like that, but unfortunately we have to move to the present day, and it's just a very, very mediocre affair all around. I would say the first three Wrong Turn films are just essential viewing, but this fourth one is where we go into the for the fans territory, and I can't even imagine that many fans are going to be all that stoked with this film. So it's time to show you the two versions that I've got for this. If you want to buy this film, this is the one that you want. Not only is it a really good, crisp HD copy, but it's got a lot of features as well. It's got a director's commentary, which I did watch. I wouldn't normally watch the commentary track of a film I didn't really enjoy, but the thing with this one is I saw the film before Christmas, and then I had to take a little break from filming, and by the time it got to like the new year, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to watch that commentary track for Wrong Turn 4 just to remind myself of where the scenes all fit in, and so yeah, I did watch the track. There's not much of note on there other than the director just merrily chatting about how he did this and that. There are a lot of featurettes, I think, on the disc, which I've not watched. All in all, very good copy of the film, unlike the one you'll find in this box set. Now, if you watched my review for Wrong Turn 3, you'll have heard me complain at length about just how terrible this box set is. Like, all the films have been stripped of their gore, especially some of the later ones. It's just utterly disgraceful. The Wrong Turn 4 version that you get in this, like all the kills all the way through, the little snippets of the violence have been taken out, the sex scenes been heavily trimmed. It's just not a copy of the film that you want to watch. And worst of all, the final scene with the snowmobile has been removed completely. So in the German version, you see the two female characters driving away on the snowmobile, and then it just cuts to credits. It's like, what the hell? So how do they explain how the events of Wrong Turn 1 are allowed to happen then? Because why wouldn't these two characters go away and get the police onto the mountain men? It just makes no sense. I'm not a gorehound, but one thing I do hate is when people's art gets messed around with, and I really don't like what they've done with this particular box set of Wrong Turn 4, but there you go. You know what, actually, now that I think about it, I've just remembered, I just happened to have my camera turned on when I was watching the German edition of Wrong Turn 4, so we can actually see a little snippet of just what my reaction was. We're coming up to my favourite part of the movie. I absolutely love this. Just wait till you see this kill. This is like so awesome. Trust me, just wait for it. What the hell? What the hell's going on? What are you doing? Behead those bitches! I don't believe it. What the fuck? Holy shit, no way. I can't believe that live footage exists. My bad. Well, it's time to get to the bag of terror anyway, so let's see what score I'm going to give this film. 1, 2 bloody axes out of 5. This is the worst score I've given for a wrong turn film thus far, and I've got a sneaky suspicion the standard could get lowered even further once I've watched number 5, because any opinion I've ever heard on that film has been nothing short of appalling. I've never heard a good word said about Wrong Turn 5. I'm very uncomfortable about finally getting around to checking it out after all these years. For years it's been the only one I've never seen. That is about to change, but we'll see what happens. Right, until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.